The text came through at 11:07 on a Tuesday night. I was in my apartment, halfway through a bowl of cereal, watching some crime show I wasn't really paying attention to. My phone lit up. I saw his name. My stomach dropped before I even read the message. "You look gorgeous tonight." Then 3 heart-eye emoji and a fire emoji. I stared at the screen. My boss, David Richardson, director of marketing at Fletcher Media Group. Married. 2 kids. Pictures of them on his desk where everyone could see what a devoted family man he was. And here he was, texting me at 11 at night, calling me gorgeous, using emoji like we were dating. This wasn't the first time. Not even close. For 6 months he'd been crossing lines. Little comments that made my skin crawl but seemed almost innocent if you took them individually. "You look nice today. That color really suits you. You should wear your hair down more often. Did you do something different with your makeup?" I like it, always paired with that smile. The one that said he was being friendly, complimentary, supportive. But I knew better. I'm 27 years old. My name is Rachel Martinez, and I've worked at Fletcher Media for 3 years. Started as a junior content coordinator. Worked my way up to senior coordinator. I'm good at my job. Really good. I write copy that converts. I manage campaigns that exceed targets. I've brought in 3 major clients in the past year alone, but none of that mattered to David. To him, I was just another young woman in his department to hit on. The texts had started 4 months ago. Casual at first. Just checking in on a weekend project. Then they got more personal. Asking what I was doing on Saturday night. Saying he wished he could join me. Telling me I must have guys lining up. I'd kept every single one. Screenshotted them. Saved them in a folder on my phone I'd labeled work just in case anyone ever saw it. I had 53 messages total. 53 pieces of evidence that my married boss was hitting on me outside of work hours. But this one was different. This one was so explicit there was no way to explain it away. "You look gorgeous tonight." Sent at 11:07 p.m. on a Tuesday. I hadn't seen him since I left the office at 5:30. He had no idea what I looked like tonight because I was wearing pajama pants and an old college sweatshirt with a stain on it. He was just thinking about me. Texting me. Late at night when his wife and kids were probably asleep. I sat there holding my phone, my heart pounding. I could ignore it, pretend I never saw it. Show up tomorrow and act like nothing happened. That's what I'd been doing for 6 months. Or I could report him to HR. But I'd heard stories about women who reported harassment at Fletcher. One had been let go 3 months later for performance issues. Another had been transferred to a different department with worse hours and a smaller team. The company protected its directors. Everyone knew that. Or I could do something else entirely. Something that would actually make him face consequences. David's wife was named Claire Richardson. I knew this because I'd met her. Twice. Once at a company family day where she'd seemed nice but distant, standing next to David with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and once at a networking event for women in media that she'd attended as a speaker. She was a corporate attorney, specialized in employment law, workplace harassment, discrimination cases. I'd watched her give a presentation about women's rights in the workplace and thought how ironic it was that her husband spent his days making inappropriate comments to the women he supervised. We'd exchanged contact info at that networking event. Kept in touch loosely. She'd reached out a few times to see how I was doing, if I wanted to grab coffee. I'd always been too busy. But I had her number, and I was about to use it. I opened a new message. Typed her name. Claire Richardson. Then I took a screenshot of David's text. The one he'd sent 7 minutes ago. "You look gorgeous tonight" with the emoji. I attached the screenshot, and I wrote, "I think you should see this." Sent it at 11:14 p.m. Then I waited. My hands were shaking. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. What if she blamed me? What if she thought I'd been encouraging him? What if this backfired completely and I ended up losing my job anyway? 3 dots appeared. She was typing. The dots disappeared. Appeared again. Then my phone rang. Claire Richardson calling. I answered. Her voice was calm. Too calm. She said, "Rachel, hi. I just got your message. Is this from tonight?" I said yes. She said, "Is this the first time he's texted you something like this?" I said no. There was a pause. Then she said, "How many times?" I said, "I have 53 messages saved over the past 4 months. Some are more explicit than others." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Can you send them to me? All of them?" I said yes. She said, "Do it now. Please. We need to talk." I spent the next 20 minutes forwarding screenshots, one after another. 4 months of inappropriate texts, comments about my appearance, questions about my personal life, suggestions that we get drinks after work, messages sent late at night, messages sent on weekends. A clear pattern of a boss hitting on an employee he supervised. When I finished sending them, Claire called again. She said, "Thank you for showing me this. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Has he ever touched you inappropriately? Has he ever made explicit propositions? Has he ever threatened your job or promotions based on your response to him?" I said no to the first 2. Yes to the third. He'd told me 3 weeks ago that if I wanted to move up in the company, I needed to be more of a team player, more flexible. He'd said it while looking at me in a way that made it clear what he meant. Claire said, "Okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to come to your office tomorrow morning. I'm going to confront him. And then I'm going to speak with HR and your CEO. You don't have to be there for any of it if you don't want to be. But I need to know if there are other women, if he's done this to anyone else at your company." I thought about it. Said, "Yes, at least 2 others that I know of. Maybe more." She said, "Can you get me their names?" I said I'd try. She said, "Good. Get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be a long day." I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling thinking about what I'd just done. I'd forwarded my boss's text to his wife, a corporate attorney who specialized in harassment cases, a woman who now had evidence that her husband had been hitting on multiple employees. I'd just blown up his life, and probably my job. But I couldn't bring myself to regret it. I got to the office at 8:30 the next morning. David wasn't there yet. He usually came in around 9. I sat at my desk and tried to look normal, checked emails, reviewed campaign metrics, drank terrible office coffee. At 8:55, Claire Richardson walked through the front doors. She was wearing a gray suit, carrying a leather briefcase, looking like she was about to go into court. She walked straight past reception, straight to David's office, and waited outside. David arrived at 9:03. I watched from my desk as he came off the elevator, coffee in hand, looking relaxed. He saw Claire. His face went white. She said something I couldn't hear. He looked around, saw me watching, saw other people in the department starting to notice. He unlocked his office, and they both went inside. She closed the door. The blinds were down, but we could all hear raised voices. It lasted 12 minutes. Then Claire came out, left David's office, and walked straight to the elevator that went to the executive floor. David stayed in his office with the door closed. 20 minutes later, he came out, looking shaken, and said he needed to speak with me. We went to a conference room. He closed the door, said, "What did you tell her?" I said, "I showed her your texts." He said, "You had no right to do that. Those were private messages." I said, "You had no right to send them." He said I was overreacting, that he was being friendly, that I'd taken things the wrong way. I said, "You texted me at 11 at night calling me gorgeous. There's no other way to take that." He said, "I'm your boss. I could fire you for this." I said, "Do it. I dare you." He didn't. Instead, he told me to go back to my desk and not talk to anyone about this. I went back to my desk. 10 minutes later, 2 people from HR came and escorted David upstairs. He was up there for 2 hours. When he came back down, he went straight to his office, grabbed his jacket and keys, and left. Didn't say a word to anyone, just left. An hour after that, HR called me upstairs. I walked into a conference room where 3 people were waiting. Head of HR, company general counsel, and Claire Richardson. Claire said, "Rachel, thank you for coming. We'd like to ask you some questions about your interactions with David Richardson." I told them everything. The comments, the texts, the veiled threats about being a team player, the feeling of being uncomfortable around him for months, but not knowing what to do about it. They took notes, asked follow-up questions, Claire asked if I knew the names of other women David had targeted. I gave them 2 names, Sarah Kim from sales and Jennifer Walsh from operations. Both had mentioned to me in passing that David made them uncomfortable, but neither had reported it. The general counsel said they were launching a full investigation. David had been placed on administrative leave effective immediately. They asked if I felt safe continuing to work there. I said yes, as long as he wasn't in the building. They said he wouldn't be. They asked if I wanted to pursue legal action. I said I didn't know yet. Claire said, "That's okay. You don't have to decide now. But I want you to know that if you do, I'll represent you. Pro bono. No cost. And if other women want to come forward, I'll represent them too." That's when I realized what was happening. Claire wasn't just a betrayed wife confronting her cheating husband. She was a lawyer who just discovered her husband had been systematically harassing women at his workplace, and she was furious. Not just at him, but at the company that had allowed it to happen. Over the next week, 4 more women came forward. 6 total, including me. All with similar stories. Inappropriate comments, unwanted attention, late-night texts, pressure to be friendly and accommodating. One woman said David had told her she'd never get promoted unless she loosened up. Another said he'd touched her lower back multiple times despite her moving away. Another said he'd asked her to have drinks with him alone after work, and when she declined, he'd given her the worst performance review of her career. Claire met with all of us, collected our stories, documented everything. Then she filed a formal complaint with the EEOC on behalf of all 6 of us, named both David and Fletcher Media Group, alleged systematic harassment, hostile work environment, and retaliation. The company's lawyers freaked out. They offered settlements immediately, tried to make it go away quietly. Claire said no. She said we were going public unless the company agreed to major policy changes, independent oversight of HR, mandatory harassment training for all managers, and substantial compensation for every woman who'd been affected. The company agreed. 6 weeks after I forwarded that text to Claire, Fletcher Media Group announced a complete overhaul of their harassment policies, hired an outside firm to review every HR complaint from the past 5 years, fired 2 other managers who had complaints against them that HR had buried, and settled with all 6 of us. The amounts varied, but mine was $85,000. Enough to cover a year of lost wages if I'd been fired. Enough to make me feel like the company was actually taking responsibility. David was fired for cause. No severance. No references. His reputation in the industry was destroyed, and Claire filed for divorce. She didn't just ask for custody and support. She went after everything. Said his workplace harassment proved he'd been lying to her for years about who he was. That she'd been married to someone she didn't actually know. The divorce settlement gave her the house, majority custody of the kids, and alimony that would last for years. David ended up in a 1-bedroom apartment 20 miles outside the city, working at a small firm nobody had heard of, making half what he used to make. Claire and I became friends. Real friends. She told me later that she'd suspected something was off with David for months, but had no proof. That my text had confirmed what she'd been afraid of. She said she felt guilty for not seeing it sooner, for not protecting us. I told her it wasn't her fault, that he was the one who'd chosen to abuse his power. She said she knew, but that didn't make it easier. We meet for coffee every few weeks now. Talk about work and life, and the ongoing work of dismantling systems that protect men like David. I still work at Fletcher Media Group. I got promoted 6 months after everything happened. I'm now a marketing manager. Got a $20,000 raise. Manage my own team of 5 people. I run my department differently than David did. I value people's boundaries. Create a safe environment. Make sure everyone knows they can speak up if something's wrong. I never text my team outside work hours unless it's truly urgent. I never comment on anyone's appearance. I treat everyone with respect, because that's the bare minimum of being a decent human. People ask me sometimes if I regret forwarding that text to Claire. If I wish I'd just reported David to HR and let them handle it. And here's what I tell them. HR protects the company, not the employees. They would have investigated, found insufficient evidence, maybe given David a warning, and then I'd still be working under him, knowing he'd gotten away with it. But by going to Claire, By giving evidence to someone who had both personal and professional motivation to act, I ensured that David actually faced consequences. Real consequences. And I helped 5 other women find justice too. That text at 11:07 p.m. was David's biggest mistake. He thought he could keep getting away with it. Thought he could hit on every young woman in his department and face no repercussions. He didn't count on one of those women being brave enough to forward his message to the one person who could actually hold him accountable. His wife, a corporate attorney. A woman who knew exactly what workplace harassment looked like and exactly how to fight it. It's been a year now. I'm 28 years old, making $88,000 a year, managing a team I'm proud of, working for a company that's genuinely trying to do better. David's somewhere else, probably still bitter, probably still blaming me for ruining his life, but I sleep well at night, because I didn't ruin his life. He ruined it himself the moment he decided his position of power meant he could hit on the women he supervised. I just made sure everyone else knew what he'd been doing in the dark. And Claire? She's thriving. Left her old firm and started her own practice specializing in workplace harassment cases. She's representing women all over the city now, using her experience with David to help others fight back. She told me once that what happened with him and me and the other women gave her purpose, showed her what she was meant to do with her career. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us to the best versions of ourselves. I look at that screenshot sometimes. The text from David at 11:07 p.m. You look gorgeous tonight. 3 emoji. 53 other messages I'd saved. One forwarded message that changed everything. People think revenge is about anger, but it's not always. Sometimes it's about justice, about using the tools you have to protect yourself and others, about refusing to stay silent when silence protects the abuser. I forwarded a text message. That's all. One text. To the right person, at the right time. And it brought down a man who thought he was untouchable. That's not revenge. That's accountability. And it feels pretty damn good.